Biennial opened, unfortunately, I couldn't be here because I just had malaria and COVID at that period. So that I'm actually addressing anything regarding the Biennial. I'd like to first thank the Biennial team from the Vinca who invited me 2 years ago actually to look at the possibilities of working on the Biennial. Together with the team coach, Sanya and everyone, it's been a real pleasure actually working on this. It's quite actually interesting because when I first came to Slovenia, I was really thinking about some of the shared histories that we have in a way, because Ghana in the post-independent era, leading to the 70s and early 80s, we had a lot of relations to former Yugoslavia. Because Ghana was part of the non-aligned movement, and at the time, during the struggle for independence, the idea was to find spaces of solidarity in ways that we could somehow share ideas, knowledge forms, resources, and all that. And I think over time, those solidarities somehow bred various points of aesthetics, like within the modernist era, which was one of the main things that myself and my colleagues, the curators, were very much interested in. So I was actually thinking about ways in which we could create an exhibition that could allow for us to somehow re-excavate these histories. And architecture plays a very significant role within this conversation. For instance, one of the most important points of inspiration was one of these buildings in Ghana. It's called the Food Distribution Corporation. So it's a group of buildings that were brutalist buildings that were built in Ghana between the late 50s and the mid 60s. And these buildings were actually built in order to be able to store large quantities of food, basically for the idea of prosperity in terms of like economic independence and freedom within the continent. But a lot of this, of course, didn't succeed. By the mid-60s, when there were coup d'etats happening around the world, from Africa to South America, Asia, and other places, a lot of these dreams and ideas got stalled. So in today's age, almost 60 years down the line, where we are dealing with climate crisis and all these other things, like excessive drilling of oil in the oceans and others, we're also experiencing the idea of traveling back in time, where buildings that were built for certain forms of solidarity, which though they did not succeed, they somehow created, the failures of it created room for new kinds of solidarity in terms of cohabitation, animals inhabiting these spaces and all that. And one particular one in Tamale, where I was born, I had a chance to buy this building during COVID period. And we had to excavate the building in order to be able to see what was in it, because almost 60 years, no one had somehow experienced or interrogated this building or occupied it because of the myth of the relationship between Ghana and the Eastern Bloc and all that. So when we excavated the building, we realized that there was an army of bats living in the building. And that was quite interesting because that was during COVID. And a lot of people would say, why not get rid of the bats? Because COVID, the bats were the true antagonists of the period. But then I also said the other argument also is that humanity has been one of the biggest failures of the habitation of the world in itself, not animals and things like that. So we had to find a really clever way of somehow cohabiting this space, a way of using the space in such a way that you enter a bunker and there are bats living in it, and maybe an artist is commissioned to do a work, but the artist has to be sensitive to the ecosystem in the space. If not, it takes us back to the conversation of colonization, things like that. So that's where the idea of the void, from the void came the gift of the cosmos came in. The idea that we are a generation that has been born into extreme debt. Debt, not just in terms of money, but it's also more from an ideological point of view. So as we go through the different parts of the exhibitions, because our curatorial team, that's starting from Kwesi Oheniaye, Patrick Newcanter, Selam Koji, Beya Otomani, Alicia Nock, and Inga Lace. We somehow were also thinking about ways in which we could activate Ljubljana. So, of course, the Biennial has very beautiful shooteria. We have the MGLC space. But then also, of course, there's Platz. So the idea was to find ways in which we could expand the language and the conversation of the Biennial beyond the very traditional, using traditional spaces. And Krater was also very significant because once we expressed interest in terms of the idea of the Biennial, we had to find spaces which artists are somehow using in their own way. We also have one of the other Biennial, aside Sukrana, of course. Sukrana is quite interesting because I know this is the first time that it's being used as a Biennial, but I think it's also based on the history of the building in terms of what it was before from a former sugar factory. So there are a lot of politics also within that. Though sometimes as an artist, in my own, when I'm producing work and the way it's installed or shown, the idea is to think about ways in which we could somehow also still work with the old. So though as an artist, we're working with spaces like Sukrana and others, sometimes even for my own